I was very much bored in Japan. They'll see me in the stations and they'll be like, Wakanda forever. You generally don't hear Japanese people say they hate something. And Japan's still a little old-fashioned with this. It is getting better. It's the same reason why I don't really watch J-vloggers. Some of my hindrance is the fact that I live in Japan.
Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby and sitting here today with Akasan.
Hey, how
Thank
you
you for
doing,
coming.
And my pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. And we dropped the phone
And
on
I'm
the floor.
dropping my phones already. I'm so nervous to be here.
Yeah.
But we're about to go borderless. There
So
you go.
you came all the way from Fukuoka?
No,
Is that
this
correct?
time
This
Tokyo.
time from Tokyo.
I came all the way from Tokyo. I live in Tokyo now. I used to live in Fukuoka, but I wish I came from Fukuoka. The travel would have been cheaper.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you're a Twitch streamer. You're
Yes.
a YouTuber. You've been in Japan for more than a decade
Yeah.
and been doing lots of things here.
A lot.
Before we get into the things
Yes.
you're doing here and talk about content creation
Sure.
and the reactor niche on YouTube,
Okay, sure.
tell us a little bit, what brought you to Japan in the first place?
I often say, and only a few people get this quote, is that I was looking for like a rare blue flower, just looking for something different, or looking for the challenge. I had been to Japan previously, early 2000s, 2001, 2003 and such, and I enjoyed it a lot, but I never actually considered living here until circa the Bush Jr. administration. The economy was really bad. Things were not looking so great in America in terms of my own sort of future. I had been in LA most of my life, born and raised. Universal City, NoHo, stand up. But I don't know. I didn't feel like there was like a path happening right then and there. Everybody was on stimulus checks right now. The economy wasn't necessarily tanking, but things were just rough. So I thought it would be kind of cool to just study abroad. And so I decided to move to Tokyo around Azabu-Juban, and I became an international student, Ryugakusei.
From all the places you could have gone for international studies, why Japan? Why Tokyo?
It was normal. It was totally natural. My best friend, he's actually Japanese American, and my cousin introduced me when I was really young. He introduced me to Japanese animation, and I know it sounds very cliche-ish, but at that time, that was just the thing. The way Korean music, K-pop, is a thing now for Americans, that's what anime was. That was the gateway thing that got a lot of people into it, right? He showed me this stuff when there were no subtitles, nothing. I fell in love with it. So my best friend, his father actually taught a Japanese English community sort of gathering in downtown Los Angeles. And I used to just go help him set up and things like that. And I met a lot of Japanese people, some who are still my friends to this day. And so because of that, I just already had a lot of established connections in Japan, even before I decided to start living here. So I just thought it'd be kind of the natural thing to sort of do this.
You mentioned that before moving, it was a bit rough in LA and you didn't know what your perspectives were, so you decided to come to Japan as a student, kind of giving yourself a fresh start.
Yeah.
What were the first impressions of not being here as a tourist, but actually being like, oh, I'm actually living here, I'm studying, I'm doing something new?
Oh, man. That's interesting because, I had been a tourist and I actually had been working for Japanese companies in Los Angeles as well. So I would actually travel back and forth to Tokyo and Osaka a lot. I guess it was kind of natural, to be honest. Like, it was a very natural progression. It just seemed like a much, much longer vacation until it didn't anymore. So I don't really feel like there was any big difference other than the fact that I was living in a dormitory with a lot of international students, and that was probably about it. What really, I think, changed for me was when I finally got an apartment. After I moved out of my dormitory, you have to find your own place to live. And that was a very big moment for me because, you know, I had been living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Los Angeles. At that time was about $1,000. For that same
Not
amount
anymore.
Yeah, very much more now. For that same amount of money in Tokyo, Nerima area, I had a 1R. And I didn't even know what a 1R was until I really experienced it, because that just is almost non-existent in Los Angeles. Maybe New York, yes, like a small little studio, but man, I had never experienced something quite like that until I started living like that. So, and it was still, don't get me wrong, it was a good place, but it was like fairly expensive given the things. And that was the big progression of changing my opinion and my look of like, okay, well, I'm big in Japan, but that doesn't mean Japan's gonna change, you know? So I think that was the biggest thing. And it was a huge challenge for me to try to adapt. Like, you know, everybody said, get a smaller TV, no couches, you're gonna need a futon bed or something like that. And that part was kind of hard for me a lot. So
like a big change in habits from having maybe a king size bed back in the States.
Absolutely. I mean, I lost so much weight in the beginning at that time, because people tend to say this a lot. When you move to Japan, you lose a lot of weight. That was very true. I lost a lot of weight just generally because of all the walking. There wasn't the convenience of Uber, ordering things. Like everything I had to do, I had to buy at a Japanese supermarket, and my entire diet changed completely. Then Domino's went online, and yeah, you know,
things changed again.
I started reverting back to the old me. So,
what was the moment where, you know, you came to escape a little bit to the United States? You started as a student. You moved into your first apartment. Was there a moment where you were like, I want to stay here in Japan?
No, there was never, sometimes that happens with some people, right? I had always had some sort of idea that I may not be coming back to Los Angeles. I will visit. I guess maybe recently, actually. That was like, not necessarily like I'm going to stay for the long run, but I'm like, okay, you know what? Maybe things are just better in Japan for me. And that was actually recently, when I just went back home after Corona was solved, or whatever, the Corona crisis was solved. Going back home with the tax situations, the inflation, the exchange rate, everything's expensive, and things in LA, and I won't necessarily say they're bad, but they're just very rough right now. I couldn't wait to just come back. And there was a point now where I used to be kind of excited to go back home, but nowadays I'm excited to come back to Japan, which in some form or fashion is my home now. So, you know, I guess that was really the moment, and that only took 13 years.
Only took 13 years.
It only took 13 years. And I guess I guess it's because I just have grounding now more. Like things have sort of dissolved kind of in Japan. People, Los Angeles people have moved on with their lives. And, you know, my friends, those kids are already, like, some of them are graduating from college now, things like that. And, you know, life has already moved on back home. So I don't really have any roots or grounding anymore. The only family that I had that was still living in Los Angeles is dead. So the rest of my family lives outside of that now. So.
And in Japan now, you're established as a content creator on various platforms. How did content creation get into your life from the beginnings as a student?
I was bored, actually. I was very much bored in Japan. I was, in terms of YouTube, that really started kicking off while I was in Fukuoka. But previous to that, you know, just like any other kid, I was on Facebook, just posting things. When the earthquake happened, I was here for the Tohoku earthquake. You know, I was posting stuff on my Facebook all the time, but I never looked at it as like some sort of like influencer situation or something like that. I just was updating things. It wasn't really until I was living in Fukuoka that I was just kind of bored. I was still connected a lot to people online, showing my fandom, sharing my fandom with other people, particularly the Dark Knight Rises movie, the Batman movie that was coming out. I was so hyped about it. In Japan, nobody really talks about movies the same way, in general, I guess Americans do, because it surrounds us so much. We're obsessed with it. So, I just started uploading to YouTube, sharing my reactions to certain trailers and things, only just to share with my Facebook group like that. But it started going viral. These videos started going viral with other people. That was kind of the birth of like Akasan, the reactor, basically.
That's quite interesting because, so you do react videos.
Yes.
And I didn't really know it was a niche, it was a genre until not so long ago. But if you think about it, it's been there for pretty much ever. It's always been popular to have people react to things.
Absolutely. Beavis and Butthead, Mystery Science Theater 3000. That's what was kind of my influences when I started reacting to stuff. At first, I was just doing it for my friends, for my people. But then gradually, I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do this, like, let me take this a little more seriously. I had done radio a long time ago when I was young. I was an intern for 102.7 KISS FM, K-Big 104, a bunch of big Los Angeles radio stations. And DJs took me under their wing when I was hitting puberty, and they were like, okay, we're going to show you how to control your voice, how to really make this happen. So I used all that training and incorporated it into my YouTube channel. And, overall, I was pretty satisfied with the way it came out.
So for people who don't know you, and to give a little context, what kind of videos do you react to?
Generally speaking, I do a lot of superhero superhero comic books, CBMs, we used to call them, comic book movies content. And again, the base context of this was I never really saw it as a job. I just saw it as like, look, I'm a fan of something. I want to share my enthusiasm with other people across the internet and things like that. Granted, that has also really that niche has kind of pigeonholed me into only really being looked at as a comic book movie reactor, so to speak. The biggest challenge I've been having actually is doing anime reactions, which I think is so funny because of the fact that, I've been living here in Japan for 13 years. You'd think that there'd be an audience that might be kind of interested in my take as someone who lives in Japan, my take on anime. Doesn't always click as well as I thought it was going to be.
Why do you think it doesn't click like that?
I think it's relatability. I think one of the things about a reaction is the fact that it's regular people. It's not professional criticism. It's not comedians. It's not actors. It's not entertainers. They can be entertaining, but the whole thing is it's supposed to be very down-to-earth type of people, are relatable people, the everyday man, and the audience should be able to connect with said people like that. And so I do think some of my hindrance is the fact that I live in Japan, that it's sometimes a little hard for some people to relate. Even with my live streams, I've noticed that more and more, it generally are people that are in the chat are people who, other foreigners who live in Japan, or people who have visited Japan at least once, or they have some sort of like connection sort of situation like that. Not anybody, in the past, I have had people that are vicariously living through me in Japan, but now there's such an access to so many people that you can kind of pick and choose sort of thing. So
you just said one interesting thing about reactions should be by like normal people and relatable. And I preparing for our conversation today, I was thinking a little bit about these reaction videos. And then it hit me that on Japanese TV, if you look at a variety show, you always have some talentos, or these kind of semi-famous people that are regularly on those shows, in a small framed square on screen reacting to whatever is going on, whether it's the news, whether it's a joke, whether it's comedy. So they always show the reaction of someone who's invited on the show to the audience.
Yeah.
But they are not the normal people anymore, right? So people want to see a little bit the reaction of famous people. How do they think about this?
Correct. So, and I think with that concept, it's just a little bit different because the content itself is kind of, I wouldn't say mundane, but it's not supposed to be overreactive like that. So it's the talento that makes the situation interesting, you know? And if they can point something out, they'll make it more interesting like that.
Yeah, Japanese TV is interesting.
It is. It is.
Do you watch it a little bit?
If NHK is asking, no. But I generally do. My wife, you know, it's funny. My wife, who's also Japanese, she doesn't watch much of any Japanese TV either. So once Netflix kind of came around, once a lot of VOD sort of stuff became a service and was included in your television, I noticed we really do not watch. Watch little to none at this point. It's quite interesting about that. However, if we had a bigger house, because she and I have very different hours, so when she's getting ready for work, I'm sleeping. So in the past, maybe that was her watching the morning news or something like that to get ready. But nowadays we can't because I'm sleeping like that, and vice versa. So yeah, it's I don't really watch too much of anything. I actually, ironically, used to watch more anime and J-dramas when I was living in America.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, I've heard that a lot from a lot of people. Like, they stop watching so much content when they move to Japan. They don't really lose the feeling, but they lose the, it's like, okay, I'm already here, like that. It's the same reason why I don't really watch J-vloggers or travel videos about Japan, because I'm already here in Japan. I can just do it myself like that. So it kind of makes sense in some ways.
Going back to the reactions, and as we see on Japanese TV, reactions of people are quite popular. Do they have this reactor niche in Japan as well, where on YouTube you'll see Japanese people reacting to various things as a genre, as content creation?
Yes. Yeah, basically yes, but not in the same format, because you know, we have this ongoing, as I'm sure you're familiar, when you go to the movie theaters, right before the movie starts, there's always this one mannequin kind of camera guy always talking about no download or something like that, or it's illegal or something like that. There's always this ongoing campaign about bootlegs and torrents and don't download all this. And a lot of people's opinion is still, in Japan, it's still a little old-fashioned with this. It is getting better, but Japanese companies generally don't like things being reacted to on YouTube, mainly because they just can't make money off of it, and they don't like it being out. Like one of the Kohaku, the New Year's event the other day that happened a few months ago, was a huge performance with a bunch of international Korean bands coming together with YOASOBI doing that idol
Even
song.
Queen was there.
Who?
Queen
was there too. Huge international prospects, right? Blew up on Twitter like crazy. Shut down by NHK. And it's so funny to me because of the fact that they made it a point to be so international, but keep it within Japan context. Nobody can watch that show again, ever again. It was a one-time gig, and so hopefully, if you were lucky, you got it on some other website. But Japan's so uniquely strict about that kind of stuff. About like, look, we just don't want anybody to see it unless it's controlled on television or through our other sort of system like that. So.
And it seems like they're getting stricter and stricter. This is maybe slightly unrelated, but it was in the news recently, maybe a couple of days ago, that some foreigners have been arrested in Fukuoka because they have leaked some manga images, I think a day before release or something like that. and they've been arrested and questioned. I don't know what the consequences will be, but they really don't mess around with kind of sharing content, reacting to content, and want to keep it too private.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is preventing the spread of certain things from Japan, like Japanese cultural elements? Is the way they come out of Korea now are kind of restrained to Japan because it's not or very hard to share them?
That's kind of like a sort of a trick question, because I understand. I've talked with a lot of these companies. Like, I've had conversations with Toho because I've been the victim of copyright claims and copyright takedowns. My channel has been demonetized several times, and it's always usually because of anime, particularly Demon Slayer. And I've talked with them. It's like it's a matter of control. But they also realize that there's a huge international market for this sort of stuff. But for them, regulation is key. Korea has that regulation covered a lot more. When I did reactions to K-pop music, I wasn't making anything off of it. I wasn't making a dime off of it, because every video that I would upload immediately was claimed by a Korean music company. So they had that. They're so familiar with the way this stuff works. They get it regulated. Where I think there is a bit of a slow growth with Japan understanding how international things work a lot more. That they rather just be like, oh, it's so annoying. We'll just completely block everything and let our American or international distributors take care of that. So it's a really interesting concept, but who knows what is the best way for that to work out, right? Because let me put it this way: Across the Spider-Verse, which is the sequel to Into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales, Spider-Man, all that. That's from Sony, a Japanese company, but it's in tune with Marvel, which is an American license. This movie came out generally almost on time in Japan, released everywhere. Huge satisfaction. Everybody enjoyed this movie. Half the people I talked to who enjoyed the movie illegally downloaded it. When, they live in Japan, you could have gone somewhere and, you could have just watched it in the theater. They're like, nah, they just take it for granted at that point. And that's a huge fear. Animation is not cheap, as I'm sure you know. And, Sony is putting in all this money to produce these full feature-length films, animated, and people just download it illegally because it's easily accessible. That's the kind of regulation that keeps Sony, Japanese companies, up at night. It's like, oh, well, if we don't regulate it hardcore, then people are going to just illegally download it, because it's so easily accessible. So I get that point, You just brought up a couple of interesting points that I want to dive into a little bit more. But the first one will be, you mentioned you dealt with a Japanese company like Toho. So Toho is a movie production company that dates back to, I think, the post-war era, and that also owns a chain of cinemas. Correct.
So Toho cinemas are
very
popular.
Animation as well, and then there's also Toei Animation, a lot of subsidiaries. Yeah.
So what's the process like dealing with a Japanese company like Toho when you get contacted by them, or you're kind of discussing?
They don't contact me. I contact them first and foremost. It takes a lot of investigating and figuring out who I can talk to, and sometimes I end up with dead ends, right? But I've also had to write legal notices in Japanese because on top of the studios themselves, then there's like a sub factor of just fans that will go around shutting content down on YouTube, like actual just fans. One of them is actually in Osaka, who used to go around to all the different videos and just shut down stuff.
A vigilante.
Yeah, they were vigilantes, like the ultimate simps or something for these companies going around, and I've had to send legal notices to these companies because I'm like, You're not even you don't even you're not even the actual company. Why are you taking down my videos like that? So I've sent them in Japanese, and then after that, everything gets lifted because I'm like, yo, these scare tactics ain't gonna work on me. So
Are those companies kind of open to discussion where you can interact with them, you can explain the problem, they will respond?
Well, in terms of the vigilantes, they're not the company.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to waste my time talking with them because they're just kind of fanatics that are trying to protect and white knight these products. But I'm like, look, like you don't even know if the actual company themselves are okay with this or not. They might actually be ecstatic that people are interested in it. So it's not worth my time to deal with that. A good example is AMC. One of my biggest series that I ever covered was The Walking Dead. Walking Dead is published by Skybound Entertainment, but it's distributed and broadcasted by AMC, American Movie Channel, something like that. I would be completely whitelisted by Skybound. They were so cool with me. They actually would go and take my reactions and other people's reactions and make weekly compilations to that on their YouTube channel. And they loved it. Everybody was huge with it. But AMC hated it. And so the AMC would go around tagging people's channels, pulling them down, things like that. So there was a huge internal situation, with AMC and Skybound about how they're going to deal with reactions and things like that. Eventually, Skybound won that one, but it was just the craziest thing sometimes. Like, it was quite interesting. Yeah.
And all those companies, as you mentioned earlier, basically are doing this because they're worried about illegal downloads. They're worried about basically losing a share of the profit from the investments they do into producing a movie.
Correct. And distribution as well.
And distribution.
Because a lot of these battles happen prior to the a la carte Disney Pluses, the expansion of Netflix. Everybody was going for that Netflix concept because they saw how much Netflix was making and a king alone on a hill, basically, with no competitors, basically. And then Paramount Plus happened, Disney Plus, all these other a la carte things. And now that that's around, it's getting a little bit easier because my speculation is a lot of these studios just saw YouTube as a free distribution site, and that's what they hated the most. And reaction videos, unfortunately, were lumped into a lot of that as well. You're just illegally distributing said content. I'm like, well, some people might be uploading the entire episodes. I'm actually cutting things out and giving snippets and like that. And to this day, there's still kind of that unspoken rule of like, you should keep it short. It should be barely recognizable what scene you're reacting to, as to essentially get people to tune in to the actual show.
And you mentioned in Japan, most of the people you asked to that could have gone to watch a movie like this Spider-Man movie in the cinema actually said, nah, I'll just download it.
Yeah.
Why are people not going to the cinema again anymore in Japan?
Loaded question on that one. I personally think it's inconvenience for most people. I would even argue that stands the same in America. It's just that Americans are obsessed with the theater. I mean, I was born in Hollywood, so I know how that works. That's our livelihood, right? That's just, go to the weekend, go to the theater, check out a movie, right? Drive-ins, things like that. Japan, it's a whole ordeal. I got to take 2 trains just to go to my local cinema. And, I need to make sure I reserve the ticket. It's a whole ordeal. And then it's not as simple as just, driving back home after the movie. You got to get on the train, rush hour, all that stuff. It's kind of annoying. Secondly, the price. I want to say it's expensive. And in some form or fashion it is, but when I actually compare the prices back home to America, it's roughly about the same. Roughly. Next part is availability of actually finding said movies in English subtitles, or I'm sorry, in Japanese subtitles, but English voices like that. Not everybody really has time to kind of search around and find when they're playing. A lot of people don't know how to navigate those websites and things like that. So I think there's a few different things, but ultimately I just think it comes down to people don't respect the cinema and the content enough to actually give money. They're under this mystery. They're under this illusion that every project that comes out is funded by billion-dollar corporations that will never lose money, when the fact of the matter is they're all kind of losing money, especially post-pandemic. Disney put up their numbers and they've been losing money. Yes, so sad, too bad. And a lot of people are just like, well, okay, whatever, who cares? They're still making a lot. They're making more money than I am. I'm like, yeah, but you're not making movies, so
One of those companies that is pretty big and pretty famous and that you react to a lot is Marvel. And Marvel was pretty big in Japan, at least as far as I know. A few years ago, there is a huge fandom of the different Marvel characters.
Thanks to Disney, yeah.
How is it today? Is Marvel still big in Japan?
Ooh, good question. I believe that ever since Disney bought Marvel, just like Star Wars, there has been a push to make Star Wars and Marvel just as known as Mickey Mouse and Disneyland and all this other stuff in Japan. I think it's still trendy. We just recently had Tokyo Comic-Con in Makahari Messe over in Chiba area, and oh my God, the line for Benedict Cumberbatch was huge, so much that he had to come in one extra day. So a lot of my fans, Japanese fans, they know me through Marvel. They'll see me in the stations and they'll be like, Wakanda forever. And I'm just like, cool, okay. I'm like, nice, like that. Yeah. So, I love it. I love that. I believe it's there. And I actually believe that Marvel and even DC has a stronger, less cynical fandom than in Japan than in America. Like, every movie that comes out from Marvel, my friends who are comic book fans, they're waiting anxiously for it. And they never say anything bad about the movies. There is a bit of cynicism within, I would say, the Western world, because again, we're used to it. This is our world. We're used to this. And we're like, you know what? That underperformed. I didn't like it. You generally don't hear Japanese people say they hate something, right? Even something as topical as Prime Minister Abe, former Prime Minister Abe, when he was assassinated, the funeral was going on. He was a very controversial prime minister. Not everybody really liked him, but not everybody publicly said that they didn't like him. Even at the funeral, people were like, I would press my students and they'd be like, well, I didn't exactly agree with his policies. And, I'm sorry that he's dead, like that. But that's as far as they'll go, reverse it to, in a Western area, we'll openly say how we hate politicians or something like that. And we're like, man, I'm glad that guy's dead, Or
a movie for that matter.
Exactly. So I think the critiques are a lot higher and things like that. Just even right now, there's a video of the Suicide Squad game that's come out recently, and people have been openly hating that game. But most of those people that are openly hating it haven't even played the game. So I don't, even a better example is Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter game. There was a whole protest, blah, blah, blah. You know what? That was the #1 selling game of 2024.
Really?
2023, yeah. It beat out Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which is insane because everybody was trying to boycott this game. Suddenly it was the #1 selling game, as far as I know. So,
So Marvel is not being criticized too much in Japan. The fans generally like it. They go watch the movies.
Yeah.
And Marvel kind of it's a comic franchise,
Correct.
like DC, and this is basically the American competitor to, let's say, Japanese manga and anime, in a way, right? Would you say the treatment of Japanese manga and anime is the same as foreign kind of comics? Are they more strict with how anime are being released and criticizing?
You're talking about Japanese people,
Yes.
right? Yes, actually. That's actually, I've never even thought about that, but yeah, that is very true. When the subtext, like when an animated adaptation of something comes out, I have noticed Japanese people critique a lot more. My wife will be like, "Yeah, it was better in the manga," or something like that. Or, I definitely have noticed that when we're watching an anime or something like that, I'll look her over and she'll be on her phone half the time. I'm like, "Why aren't you actually watching the show?" She's like, "Oh, I read the manga. So I'm just waiting for this cool scene to happen," like that. And then when they adapt like a movie or something, very, very different sort of attitude to it. And I never really see somebody be like, "Yo, that anime that came out was amazing. I loved it." A good example for me is Jujutsu Kaisen Zero. I didn't really like the first season. I thought it was a little overrated the way people were hyping it up. But when I watched the movie, I fell in love with it. I thought that movie was great. My wife was just like, she just never will talk about the movie ever. And the only people I can talk to are my fans about it, but I'll never find anybody like enthusiastically just talk about how great that movie was. Very interesting, the way that works.
Would you say it's even a thing to compare American comics and Japanese anime manga culture?
I think there are some similarities with the fans, the way that works a little bit. Yes, in some form or fashion, but I do believe that a lot of anime or a lot of manga is considered to be sometimes hyper-realistic or sometimes just an extension of fantasy, like a reality turn fantasy. You'll have stories where people travel back in time and they just in some form of reincarnation. That's very popular right now. Whereas the comics world, you're dealing a lot with multiverses and people that are just more than an average man, with fantastical powers and quite frankly, franchises and titles and characters that have been around for 70 plus years now. Batman, I believe, is 75, 80 years old now. Yeah, it's been a long.
And I think a Batman actor passed away. A former Batman actor passed away a while back as well.
I guess depends which one, but yeah, the voice actor Kevin Conroy actually passed away over a year ago. So, and he was actually my mentor in some forms of fashions and many reasons. Still in this business today. So, I did have the honor of meeting him before he passed away in New York, and so he'll greatly be missed. So, and it is so. I guess in some sense like that, yeah. People will continue to remember somebody like that in America or in the Western areas and remember the legacy that Kevin Conroy had, the same way where when certain voice actors in animes, when they pass away, they'll always be remembered like that.
I am curious about the changes in comics and these franchises like Marvel. The way they've done movies in the last few years has changed also based on the cultural context, which is changing at the moment, basically every year. And we see in those American movies a lot of social issues are somehow integrated in those comic movies and being discussed and such. Are these kind of social debates and norms understood when these movies are projected here in Japan? Do Japanese people pick up on the discussions that are kind of brought forward by franchises like Marvel?
Nowadays, with social media, a lot more, yes. But like, for example, when The Marvels came out, that was a female-led cast, female director, I believe, female villain. And yes, you know, some people, I would say some of my Japanese friends did pick up. They're like, wow, there's a lot of women in this movie, right? And it may not have performed as well. I don't know if it's because of that. Maybe some other situations involved, obviously. But, you know, there was excitement to see the movie. But it just didn't really do as well as anybody expected. But I do remember early on, Black Panther. Black Panther was a very interesting example because I saw that movie in Shinjuku. It was pretty much 50-50, half foreigners, half Japanese people. And there were a lot of black people. And I thought it was great because, you know, people were dressed up. My Japanese friends were dressed up in Wakanda gear. One woman looked just like Storm from the X-Men and everything. I thought that was great. Afterwards, you know, I'm coming out tears in my face because it was such a relatable sort of movie and so connecting to me on so many different levels. A Japanese family came up to me and they were just like, why? They just wanted to know. They were like, why were you guys like laughing so much? Or why were you guys applauding at certain parts in the movie like that? You know, I don't remember and I don't understand. And so I kind of had to like just give a brief history about why this movie is so important for African Americans and just black people around the world, the influence that movie had. And, you know, they were like, cool, I kind of get it, but okay, cool, like that. So, but they still love the movie. That's what was so cool about a lot of those movies is that it transitioned beyond just the color of someone's skin, that it could still be relatable in somebody else's life. Pinpointing to something else, just on top of that, one of the things I've noticed as well is it's also the masked heroes that do much better in Japan as well.
So where the face cannot be seen.
Correct. So Spider-Man, Black Panther.
Why is that?
Relatability. Really a bit, you know, I personally think Spider-Man can be anybody. And I think Japanese people felt the same way. It's like, yeah, they know if they really look into it, Spider-Man is a white dude out of Queens, right? The traditional Spider-Man as we know it, right? But anybody can be, as you know, living here in Osaka, we have two Spider-Man in Dotonbori as well. We call them the Dotonbori Spider-Man. USJ made a lot of money when they got the Spider-Man ride.
Which just closed.
Which just retired recently. They had the voice actor from SMAP, or the performer from SMAP doing the voice of Spider-Man. So Spider-Man was so relatable that anybody could be Spider-Man. Small, tiny, bounces around, things like that. But something like Thor, Captain America, it was a lot harder to sell. Actually.
Big white guy with lots of muscle, 190.
A big white European dude.
I met Chris Hemsworth once. He is very big.
He really is.
You have to look up and be like, wow.
He really is. But that all being said, that was the early stages of Marvel, I noticed. Even Batman was had some kind of issue because that was such an American thing, rich white dude going around, you know, beating the crap out of thugs. But the masked figures, just a little bit different, and particularly red figures of people that like red. As you might know, red is the color of the hero. The hero, the leader, will always wear red like that. And so, you know, Spider-Man kind of fits that quota. There's a few other ones that I'm sort of blanking out on right now, but those are the ones that are the most popular and the most adaptable in Japan.
If we flip it now back to manga and anime, would you say that in the realm of manga and anime, they do bring up Japanese social issues and kind of start to, or try to get the discussions going on what's happening here in a way that is more relatable to Japanese people living here?
Yeah, but I also feel like, well, in terms of the American audience, they're kind of happy that the issues that are brought up are so underlining, are so minor that it doesn't take over the story, so to speak. So America, like from what I hear, is the fact that people like the manga and the anime is because they can't pick up on the subtle subculture context, something like that. Oshinoko is actually a good example. Is for me and other people in the industry, we're like, yo, can they be okay? Like giving all these industry secrets away about what happens behind the glitz and glam of idol world, right? But for the Western audience or international audience, they're just completely goes over their head. And they kind of like that, you know, because they don't want to have to worry about
so it's a bit less obvious.
Yeah,
more
exactly.
But still, some big animes. At the moment, I'm watching One Piece.
Okay.
After seeing the live action, I was like, oh, I want to know what happens next. And I started watching, and I had a lot of catching up to do.
Nice.
But they do bring up quite a lot of social issues too, and especially in I don't know if you watch it, but Fishman Island arc, where they really talk about racism and segregation. In a way that's not that subtle anymore, where really this fisherman race is kind of put under the water. I'm really curious if this kind of brings up discussions about racism in Japan, for example, or if this is no way.
No, because I think because they're fish people, like, you know, like.
So it's distant enough again, so that it's not the issue is brought up, but it's distant enough.
I know where you're going at with this, but. The subtext is there, but not enough that people really want to care about it. Like, for example, the X-Men. The X-Men was very much inspired by the civil rights movement and, minorities being treated differently. And so Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Professor X, are actually Magneto and Professor X, right? Lots of influence. Stan Lee has said that many of times, right? Oda-san, One Piece, maybe they have some stuff in there, and it's in there, but it's not anything where somebody's going to be like, oh, you know what? We should really be more open, because Japan is a very homogenous society, and we see it all the time. Even really subtle things. Just recently, when they were talking about how it's going to be harder to keep your permanent residency if you don't pay your bills, and you know, for you and I, maybe that's just like, you probably should pay your bills, right? But there's so much cries from other Western foreigners crying about racism and screaming racism and things like that. So it's not really, Japan will always, I believe, be very focused on that one nationality, Japanese people. They slowly are opening things a little bit more. Things are changing, but there's never going to be that like melting pot that we are so used to in other countries. And I think the quicker people expect that or accept that, the easier they can do transitioning into wanting to live here or so, you know.
You've been here for 13 years now.
Yes, sir.
Is content creation something that you've been able to make a full-time job?
At one point it was. It has been quite a struggle, again, with my main subject having nothing to do with Japan. It probably could have been a full-time gig. Who knows? Maybe it could have been a full-time gig if I had moved back to America and been a little more connected, because I was flying back and forth a lot, and most of the money I was making was going into hotel fees for New York Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con, things like that, working with Warner Brothers and interviews and things like that. But at this moment in time, it is not. I would hope it would be. Corona, definitely YouTube, Twitch saved my life during Corona, because there was no way to make money in Japan. So, but it was also a matter of like, well, everybody was at home, so they had time to watch everything and everyone, right? Now that the borders are reopening and now nature's returning, a lot of that audience has kind of dipped and moved on to their own certain lives. So it is a lot harder to do content creation now, especially where everything has been, you know, I used to put out 20-minute videos, 30-minute videos on YouTube, and that was the thing, right? It was so normal, and people would sit through all of that. But TikTok took over the world, and now every other platform is copying that vertical video attention span of 30 seconds sort of content. And that's a little bit harder for my generation to kind of make content around, like, you know, quick and simple. And I won't even get into the amount of money that those types of videos don't make, you know.
I'm curious because you mentioned Japan content creators a while back, and you said that you don't necessarily do this type of travel content because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
But you're still a content creator based in Japan.
Correct.
Do you feel like there are some misconceptions about becoming a content creator, about maybe becoming a content creator specifically in Japan? Questions that you frequently get about, oh, your life must be awesome because you made videos on YouTube.
So there are assumptions that people feel like this is my only job. And I can kind of get that, but a lot of people for the longest time have always thought that I'm living good, or at least this is my only job. This is what I do full time. And so some people get actually really upset sometimes when I'm really late on something, doing something. So like, oh, why wasn't this video up? Or why can't you play this video game? This is your job. I'm like, actually, this is what I do when I have time, you know, and I try to schedule everything around it, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Why isn't this Demon Slayer reaction, especially with the anime? That's the biggest one. It's like, you live in Japan, bro. Why isn't this video up like right now? Like, you should be ahead of everybody else. Well, when that video comes out, it's usually like 6 a.m. in the morning or something like that. And you guys are able to get to it, but I still have my regular job I need to do. So there are misconceptions about that, but you know, you just have to work through it. So.
Any advice you'd like to give to someone who's like, I want to come to Japan, I want to make videos and travel around and become a content creator? I see you laughing.
I'm laughing because I want to say don't. We got enough. We got it covered, basically. There's I think the people that do the travel videos, and if you are interested in doing something like that, you really need to have a set sort of vision in mind.
It's been done too much.
Oh, definitely. Every time I flip, the moment the borders opened, I started getting all these content creators I've never heard of in my feeds suggesting places I should go eat. And I'm like, I'm okay, you know, like that. It's cool, and I have nothing against people doing that, like make that bank. But a lot of those people have been doing it for a long time, anyways. It's just a matter of timing. I was just having this conversation with some YouTuber who has been wanting to they want something to kick off, but if you only post like once a month, it's never gonna work like that. Like a lot of these people that have gone viral, they have been putting out content for a very, very long time, and they've been very consistent about it so that they're seen as the go-to person for travel content and things like that, you know, and they all have an image. They all have an image that you remember easily. Guy with the fox mask, the one Asian girl with purple hair. Everybody has a particular sort of thing.
Red dreadlocks.
There you go, like that. And so you're known for that, basically. So it's an interesting thing, but if there was any advice I could ever give for somebody who wanted to do it, you know, you gotta enjoy it. You gotta enjoy it and have a set plan. And if it doesn't work out, don't beat yourself up over it. Like you don't wanna go into the red, no pun intended. You don't wanna go into the red trying to make a YouTube channel work or a travel channel work or some sort of thing. Why don't, you know, if it just doesn't work, it doesn't work. At least you want to look back on that time and be like, well, I still had a great time visiting all these places. Not that, oh, I wasted my time visiting these places because I never went viral, you know? I think that would be the best thing I could enjoy. At the end of the day, even if I wasn't Akasan, even if it wasn't Comics Plus anymore, I still had a great life enjoying my fandom, sharing my fandom with a bunch of people. And even if Marvel to this day just completely dies or whatever, it was still a great run, and I'll always look back on that with cherished memories, you know?
With all the changes that are constantly happening on the different platforms, you said the content is getting vertical format, it's getting shorter, 30-second attention span, 6 seconds attention span. I can't speak anymore. New social media popping up and disappearing.
Yeah.
What do you see is coming now for the next? Do you notice a specific trend in social media, in content creation at the moment that is kind of developing or emerging?
I mean, vertical videos, that's basically it. Like, you know, my wife will sit there, she won't watch a 40-minute movie or a 30-minute TV show or something like that, but she will spend an hour on Instagram and just doing all this because she thinks she's saving time because she's getting more content, more videos per minute, right? But I'm just like, okay, whatever, right? I think we are in the stages of a la carte right now, a la carte entertainment, and the fact that we have the Disney Plus, the Paramount Plus, the Hulus, the Netflix, Wow, all these sort the Docomo Plus, especially in Japan. There's a slur of video programs out there, and we're in that moment where everything is being separated, but eventually I think it'll all sort of dissolve and come back into Netflix, and the king will remain still. You're gonna basically just have Netflix, Amazon Prime, and that's that. I mean, in huge news, the WWE, it completely, World Wrestling Entertainment completely will be off TV and is exclusively going to Netflix. They'll be producing a weekly show that is huge on Netflix. That is crazy. I think that's the future right there, and I think overall it's probably for the best. Yeah. I'm personally not so big on the Disney Plus, even with the way I there were some moments, but I feel that overall the Disney Plus shows have actually taken some of the magic away from the Marvel movies, and the excitement has kind of gone because it's kind of saturated the market like that. I put it the same way where people have always asked me, they're like, Akasan, don't you want to see Batman on the CW? This is when the CW was really popular, local TV, not local, but national TV network. Don't you want to see Batman on TV? I'm like, not really, because for me, Batman has always belonged on the big screen. Michael Keaton, Ben Affleck, Christian Bale, all of Val Kilmer, all of them. When you hear that music playing, when you see the WB logo, you know you're ready for something special. And the moment you make a budget version of Batman on television, there's going to be something that kind of takes the magic is taken away. Maybe a mini series on like Netflix like that, something like that. But like, you know, it's got to work well. There's a certain magic to movies, and when you start making it, downsizing it, you lose some of that fascination, I believe.
Looking back at your 13 years here now, after coming as a student and finding work, moving to Fukuoka and back to Tokyo, creating content for over 8 years now, I think.
Yeah.
What's your take on life in Japan? When you look back, do you feel like a lot changed? Is it still the same?
Yeah, things have changed. It's cigarette smoke. I stay with me here. It's cigarette smoke. When I first came to Japan, smoking out indoors was normal, totally normal. I had to buy a sort of necklace air purifier just to get clean air while I was in izakayas. And that was the thing, like there were like ashtrays everywhere. And for me, Japan, the smell of Japan was always cigarettes, sake, osake, or alcohol, beer, udon, odin from the konbinis, and that was basically it, but mainly cigarette smoke. Nowadays, the smell in a konbini is coffee from everybody went Starbucks now, coffee and fried oil from the famichiki and things like that. I think that's a good trade-off personally myself. I feel like a lot more people are open now. As much as I struggle, it's a lot harder to learn Japanese now because, especially in bigger cities, because every time I try speaking Japanese, the staff will look at me like, I can speak English. Like,
really?
Yeah.
I haven't that one yet.
It just happened to me last night. I was picking something up from Amazon. I had it delivered to the convenience store. How convenient. And I went in there and I'm showing them I just need to do a pickup and I'm trying to speak to them in Japanese about the form. And she's like, I got it. I can speak English.
And she just fixed it.
She's like, here you go.
It's interesting
like
when I asked you what's your take on change over the last 13 years and you straight went for smell.
Yeah.
Why is it such a big thing for you, smells in Japan? Why was this the first thing that came to mind?
Maybe because that's my first sensatory sort of thing. Like, you know, when you live in a metropolis city, so especially when you live you were born and raised in LA and then you moved to Tokyo, not that big of a difference. Just everybody's shorter than you, right? So, you know, it's just buildings and everything. It's downtown LA. It's the same to me, especially in New York as well. Anybody from New York would tell you that's probably going to be their biggest difference too. That's their biggest takeaway. New York versus Tokyo. What's the difference? No, the smell. You know, one smells like piss, the other one smells like cigarettes. So, you know, it's like it's I guess that's instinctively the first thing I noticed. So when I was taking the Shinkansen over here to Osaka, I missed my reserve seat, which was interesting. The reserved seat is pretty empty. Nobody's there. There's not really much of a smell to it other than somebody opening up their bento box. I went to the non-reserve area, which generally is a lot more foreigners because they don't know how to make the reserved seats, right? I had to sit in the non-reserve area. The smell was very different because we have just different body odor. We emanate a different sort of smell. And so it was a completely different environment. And it very much, you go to the airports, same situation. So I don't know, maybe I just like smelling things. The Wolverine here.
So what's next for you with everything you've done? Is there something that you want to do with your content creation or with your life in Japan?
Yeah, you know, I have been toying with the idea of retiring actually from the content creation, from the space. I don't want to, but as we've already discussed, it's getting harder and harder to just keep putting things out. It's getting harder to treat this as a full-time job, you know, knowing you're not making that sort of income, right? You know, and what I've seen happen more and more nowadays is everybody is putting on the facade, in some sense, the facade that this is all they do, but secretly we're all working and struggling hard behind the scenes at another company or something like that. And I don't know how much longer I've been very open with my audience about it, but I don't know how much longer I can do this in my 40s and still have a somewhat okay job that pays the bills, as opposed to maybe just sacrificing the passion job so that I can have a stable job to support a family in the future like that. And that is always going to be the big question: is what should I do? It's just like the actor who's waiting tables most of his career, and he's never really gotten that big shot yet. Like, at what point should he give up waiting tables and give up acting to get a stable job like that? So
it's a big question,
right? That is the question, right? At what point do you have enough time where you can still get into it, right? So that's the biggest concern. But in terms of the passion job, in terms of what I love to do, I hope I can find some sort of vehicle or some sort of attraction. Marvel and DC, yeah, they're going through a rebuilding situation. When they come back, who knows if that audience will still be there to see my reaction? Who knows if YouTube will pay that well to see said reactions? So hopefully I can do other things in the meantime and find a new sort of legacy to continue.
You happy in Tokyo?
Yeah.
Anywhere
Overall.
else in Japan you want to move to? Move back to Fukuoka?
My wife would be extremely happy if I said that, but it's difficult because they put you in Fukuoka. A lot of places in Fukuoka, well, at least in my time, I was put on a pedestal a lot. I was the great gaijin with red hair. Everybody was talking about me. Every place was talking about me, and there was never a thing where I wouldn't say I was worshipped, but it was an idea of just like, they're like, oh, how is America, or something like that. Oh, can I take a picture with you? Can I touch your hand? Can I shake your hand? Things like that. And for some of these people, rightfully so, this was like the first time they've ever seen a black dude, let alone a foreigner, right? So there were things like that were a little harder for me to like feel like I could assimilate a lot more. But with Tokyo and particularly Osaka, there's a community of people that, not just foreigners, but Japanese people as well, that are dreamers. And that's the thing I've always liked about the people I choose to make as my friends, or the community that I keep around me, is that we're all dreamers. We're all people that have this like inside of like that burning inside to keep going, to push forward, to make yourself more than who you are today. And so I guess in the long run, I get that the most out of Tokyo. It's the easiest to do that, the most expensive too. But if I could, Osaka would be good as well.
Yeah, it's right in the middle.
I know. I was just thinking right now, it's like, I used to have 2 apartments back in the day in Fukuoka, one in the countryside and then one in the city and everything. And I was just like, you know what? Could I get a small little space in Osaka? Like, I saw it's like only like rokuman a month for just a small little space. It could, if there was a way I could do a business and just travel back and forth, put me on. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to make that happen. And then if there was a way that it would help me grow the business and bring it back into YouTube or Twitch, I'd be more than happy to do it.
We covered a lot of topics.
Yes, sir.
We talked about your journey to Japan.
Yes.
We talked a lot about comics in Japan and compared anime comics, reaction, content creation, and more. Do you feel like there's something that we haven't really covered that you'd like to share, that you'd like to talk about? A hot take you have that you want to...
I guess the last thing is a fan of mine actually mentioned this yesterday when I was starting my live stream. Live streams give me a lot of anxiety, or actually I should say IRL, in real life streams give me a lot of anxiety because it's a performance art that I'm not necessarily really into. Because when I'm doing something like this, recorded or even live with fans watching, I have a plan, I have something I need to do. Roaming around aimlessly it gives me a lot of anxiety because I don't know if the fans are enjoying it. I don't know how my numbers are doing. I don't know if more people are tuning in, unless it's a beautiful woman on the other side. One of my fans mentioned this yesterday. He was like, I've seen a lot of foreigners come and go in Japan, but you're still here. That's amazing that you can survive. Not too many foreigners can. I guess it's more or less just this question, I guess, to you and I guess the audience is like, is that true? Would you say the majority of foreigners who come to Japan don't make it and they just go back after a few years or so, bye-bye, see you later, cowboy, things like that? Because it never was a thought to me. It was a thought to my family. Oh, come back like that. But I never really ever thought about maybe it's time for me to go back home or something like that. So
it's an interesting question.
Right?
And I don't know the official statistics of foreigners moving to Japan and returning home, but I don't know if there is a making it in Japan. It's more like, do you want to live here or do you not want to live here? And it's also fine if your opinion on living here changes and after a while you just want to go back. And it's not like you lost something. It's just like your life moves on, right?
Yeah, right.
I see this debate sometimes online too, on Twitter, and like making it and staying long enough until you stay forever. But you never know what happens next in life and what you want out of life. And
right. Right. There's, you know, there's people that are considered lifers. Back in the day, the older the older foreigners that have been in, you know, they have that seniority. They call them dinosaurs. The Gaijin dinosaurs, that's what they were called officially, I guess, when you reach the like 8-year, 10-year mark or something like that. And
so you're officially part of the dinosaur.
I guess I am. I don't know, man. I read this in like one of the Fukuoka Now magazines or something like that. I was just like, whatever, dude. But I think it's, in my opinion, I think what keeps me here and why I'm comfortable here is the peace of mind that I get. And I've always said that living in Japan for me has been sort of like, it's because of the fact that Japanese isn't my first language. It's like the Charlie Brown teachers in the Peanuts cartoon. When the teacher is talking, he's like, womp, 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 womp. That's the way I feel living in Japan. Like, everything is tuned out for me. Like, I hear Japanese, but I'm not really connected with it. And so I'm just like, you know, I'm just going on my own. I never listen to headphones while walking or anything. I don't even, the only time I use headphones is usually for YouTube stuff. I don't need it because I'm in the zone. I'm at peace with myself. Versus in Los Angeles, when I go back home, I'll be in a Target or Best Buy and I'm hearing somebody vocally complain about their problems so outright, and there's so much like negativity that unfortunately affects me that it's a big difference. So I guess that's probably the reason why it's never really troubled me so much to live out here, where I know for others it's really difficult sometimes. So, but like you said, I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. There's nothing wrong with going back. You tried it, you know, you did what you could. And you have to think about your future and grounding and your own legacy. And if it's going back home, then that's fine.
Thank you, Akasan.
My pleasure.
For coming today, for sharing your story. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, this is cool. I was so nervous,
Not at all. We couldn't hear it at all.
Awesome.
This was Unpacking Japan. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll be back next week. Bye.